It's the Harris Football Podcast with your host, Christopher Harris.
Welcome! Hey everybody, welcome in. My name is Chris and this is a show about bribery. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. Hello there. Thank you so much for listening today. This is it, the last day of July. We have finally arrived. Starting next week, we got 5 podcasts coming your way every week until the end of the year, just about. And also, Monday is Almanac Day, and I've been seeing the orders come in. I really appreciate that very much. If you order the Almanac today or over the weekend, on Monday morning, you'll receive the PDF, the 2026 Harris Football Player Profile Almanac. It'll finally be out after 3 months of working on it. Do I have some stuff I have to do this weekend? You better believe it. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And of course, you don't have to pre-order the Almanac if you just want to get it on Monday or sometime thereafter. Also lovely, so happy and very lucky that you would even consider it. What do you get? You get 233 player profiles in about 300 or so PDF pages. You get a lot of snark. You get some really fun illustrations. The art is great. Film grades out of me, research projects out of me. Cousin Josh has little tidbits in there. You get dynasty ranks, superflex ranks, which I don't publish anywhere else. You can find out all you need to know about the Almanac at harrisfootball.com. And what, you might ask, is such a big deal? What news are we dealing with that's requiring last-minute revisions to the Almanac and the various rankings therein? Basically, the 49ers are trying to injure me personally. It's all 49er stuff. I think you know this. So on the one hand, easier to deal with. If we're hoping to be able to identify a handcuff for Christian McCaffrey, the first few days of Niners camp seem to have made that somewhat clearer. Though we've said that before with Kyle Shanahan. We already knew that Isaac Guerendo was not going to be doing much in camp with shoulder surgery and hasn't done much in the NFL anyway. He would be in a rush to make it back for camp at all. And then second-year runner Jordan James didn't do anything last year either. Fractured a rib early in camp and will miss between 2 weeks and a month. And then the Niners worked out our old pal Khalil Herbert to maybe eventually be a camp body. But let's face it, that dream long since vanished, along with Herbert's ability to stay healthy on a football field. They've got guys like Patrick Taylor and Sincere McCormick kicking around camp, but the obvious dotted line to draw is that the surprise third-round pick, Kalen Black, gets a leg up on the backup's job. It is Shanny Jr., of course, so we are not going to presume anything. The Niners are probably not going to give us good information about who is CMC's backup for 2026. Plus, they most likely won't even use a backup very much until and if McCaffrey gets hurt again. See also the bathtub on wheels, Brian Robinson, last season. But I did scooch Kalen Black up into late round territory in all formats. And were I to take CMC in the early first round of a draft, Black might be the one that I would currently try and cover myself with. The other Niners issue seems to me more dire. 2024 first round pick, 2025 Harris Football flag player, Ricky Pearsall. By now, you surely, or probably anyway, have heard that Pearsall's knee has swollen up at the very beginning of training camp. And you've already got beat reporters leaking that the team is very concerned and they don't know what the future is, and Pearsall already might need knee surgery. And they talked about how, why didn't he have it at the end of the season? Because if he had, it would have wiped him out for this entire season anyway. This all seems very, very bad. What do we always say about training camp? The stuff we most pay attention to is the negative stuff that a team can't help from leaking out. I would say this certainly counts. Nobody has leaked that Pearsall is definitely on his way to the surgeon's table. But if I'm drafting this weekend, which obviously please don't do that, please do not draft this weekend, then I'm not taking Ricky Pearsall, I'll tell you that for free. The ranks are already updated at harrisfootball.com, and they have Pearsall cratering to around 70 among wideouts. That puts him outside the top 160. Just not going to draft him right now. I sure got to rewrite his almanac profile. This benefits Mike Evans. I hiked Evans a bit. I think I'm probably still not going to get him very much in drafts personally because, as cousin Josh told us over the spring, Evans is going a lot higher than I had him ranked before, and I assume he's only going up with this news. I thought Evans looked slow last year, but we certainly understand. He is the most draftable receiver there is there right now. There's at least a bunch of possession work, even if he's not making a bunch of deep shots, and end zone work he's really good at that could support him. The other rookie who draft experts hated, Deshaun Stribling, he's higher in my ranks. Not that high. He's obviously an absolute cipher. Nobody knows if he can play, but he is a second-round shaped hole in the depth chart. And when the main guy is getting hurt, you'll take a life preserver. Stribling is up into late-round draftable territory to me, but I assume someone's going to be like, take him in the 9th round, and I'm probably not going to take him in the 9th round, but I did increase his rank. And then, yesterday, the Niners announced they had brought home this guy.
If you like coconut debones and dishing out lots of pain.
Coconut debony, Deebo Samuel himself, brought back on a 1-year deal for relatively short money. I mean, doesn't that, we're dot connecting, but it makes it feel like Ricky Pearsall's in that much more trouble. Unfortunately, to me, the problem is that Deebo Samuel looked utterly washed in Washington last year. It looked like he ate a normal-sized Deebo Samuel. I couldn't currently get him very much higher than I have Pearsall at his reduced rank. I'll also admit, though, that's my first impression. And if I could go back and re-record the segment from a few weeks ago when we talked about what we're going to pay attention to in Niners camp, of course, I would add Deebo Samuel to that. If the everyday noise is that he's back to being a crucial part of the offense and watch out and yada yada, I'm going to have no choice but to raise him some, though I have to admit I enter this process pretty skeptical. Have there been non-49er stories worth paying attention to? No. Nope. It's only going to be Niners this spring. That's not true. Of course, there have been. Jahmyr Gibbs has been holding in, seeking out a new contract in Lions camp, which would probably have the don't take Jahmyr Gibbs #1 overall people foaming at the mouth, except the guy that they would like to replace Gibbs with, Bijan Robinson, also holding in for a new contract. I will certainly assume right now those guys will get their new deals very soon. I'm not panicking on either of those dudes on July 31st. Malik Neighbors, you'll never believe it, but the New York media is making a big deal over something. Now people are interviewing Neighbors and acting very optimistic. You got it all wrong. Neighbors, he did have a second knee procedure, but it was done with pillows, and it was so much earlier than you said. Look at him. He's already running routes. Cool. The problem is that the beat reporters in New York cry wolf a lot, and it's just tough to really believe any of it. Neighbors, as far as I know, this morning as I'm recording this, isn't yet doing full team practice stuff, is still off to the side, but let's admit, he did avoid the PUP list to start camp. So of all the possible forking paths for Malik Neighbors, he's avoided the most dire, no question about it. I have not moved him up in the ranks yet. I don't know exactly how high he can get for me. It's going to take some looking at the list and soul searching and paying attention to what they say about him over the next couple of weeks. But there's certainly, of course, some upward mobility in his rank. What else? I'm not going to talk about every single beat report. Many things have been talked about. Rome Odunze, I don't know if you heard, but his foot was mangled. It was permanently destroyed. The one thing every single person would say about Rome Odunze for 6 months was that his foot healed weird and simply was never going to be the same again. He sauntered into camp this week and said, yeah, it feels good. I'm fine. Everything's going to be good. Which is, you know what? That's why I'm glad you listen to this show. Chris Rodriguez still doing side work so far, recovering from foot surgery. Okay. Jaylen Noel, were we excited about drafting him? Not really. Hurt a finger and is out for a couple weeks. I took him out of my top 80 receivers. That's just randomly said. There's so much stuff, so many things to track. The whole point of July is to try to find the stuff we're not going to take the bait on. We're going to talk about more of that today. I will update whatever needs to be updated in the almanac in time for Monday. Another thing, yes indeed, my novel, Pound Foolish. I wrote 2 things that I'm trying to sell you. I'm really sorry about that. I mean, it was inevitable, I guess. I've said this before, they both mean a lot to me, but if you were asking me which is more important to my soul, I mean, I like the almanac. It's great. I try really hard on it, but it's a 3-month sprint about like this particular football season. And then you compare that to the book, the novel, which I started, I believe, was it the winter 2023? So like almost 3 years of work on, and like it's kind of try to pour all my feelings about football and life into. Yeah, I mean, the novel's probably going to win which one is more important to me, even though I know the novel likely isn't going to help you win a fantasy league this year. But anyway, the difference between 2026 and Pound Foolish and 2018 and Tulsa is that this time, insert massive gulp here, I am publishing the book myself under the publishing company dedicated to you, the audience, the Odd Possums. I called it Cumulative Press.
Cumulative. It's a hard word for Harris to say, yeah.
It definitely is. And I have to admit, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm certainly freaking out over little publishing-related things every single day, including when is the stupid thing going to be available for pre-order? You can actually pre-order it right now. I think at barnesandnoble.com you can get the paperback. I think bookshop.org you can get the ebook and the audiobook, maybe just the ebook. I don't know. It's supposed to be in way more places soon enough. You will be able to pre-order the paperback, the ebook, and the audiobook, which I recorded with my own delicate little voice. I'm not asking you to pre-order it right now. What I'm asking you today is, so the book will release on September 1, basically a month from now. And it turns out that if I can convince enough people to pre-order a copy before September 1st, but not on Amazon, anywhere else, just not on Amazon, all those pre-orders count toward various bestseller lists. And it would be pretty freaking hilarious for me to make a bestseller list under Cumulative Press. How much would you pay to see that? Just how insane, how stupid would that be? So this actually is my ask for you today. Tell me how you want to be bribed. I'm going to hold random drawings like every day in August. So everyone who pre-orders, you will take a screen cap and you will email and you'll let me know. And that will enter you into, like, let's just assume daily drawings. Everyone who pre-orders will get entered into every daily drawing. So every day on the show, I'll do a random draw of everyone who's pre-ordered Pound Foolish, and you'll get something. You can pre-order now if you want, if you can find it. Oh, God, it's killing me. But what I'm actually asking you today is for ideas. What are some, like, manageable things that you would like to be bribed with, that you think might lure in other people? Oh, sure, I'll buy his stupid book if there's a chance I could do blah. You know, little things. Zoom sessions. It could be like, I don't know, a cameo to the league loser in your league if you think that would be fun, or pre-draft advice, or look at my team, or I don't know, think outside the box. I have to sing something to you. I'm open to all your ideas, basically. I'll probably start promoting this in earnest on the show next week, but send me your ideas. HeyHarris@harrisfootball.com. And finally, I am going on a mini tour at the end of August. Whew. It'll be 4 cities in 4 days. And the dates will be Sunday, August 23rd, I will be in Tacoma, Washington. Monday, August 24th, Portland, Oregon. Tuesday, August 25th, Las Vegas, Nevada. And Wednesday, August 26th, Scottsdale, Arizona. And then, for those of you in Los Angeles, I haven't worked out that one yet, but it should be the next day or two after that. The venues themselves have been, like, reserved or owned by your fellow yacht possums. It should be really fun. It's everything's in a bar, so there's going to be beer if you want it. And I'll do a reading for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I'll read something from Pound Foolish, and then it'll just be a regular listener meetup, which I love because I will meet every single person who comes and we'll talk. I promise. It always happens that way. We shake hands, take pictures if you want, sign stuff if you want, whatever. Sign stuff. Who the hell am I? Just talk. It's fun. We could talk about your fantasy draft that just happened, whatever you want. I like getting to hang out with all of you. It's awesome. I love y'all. So if you're in one of those places and you're going to be around one of those days, I think they'll all get started around 7 p.m. I'll publicize the specific places where they're going to be in plenty of time. We've got graphic getting prepared right now. But just mark your calendar for those dates because it should be fun.
Today's kickoff.
Okay, on today's show, that was a lot of stuff, and we got lots more stuff coming your way. Matt Harmon from Yahoo Fantasy and ReceptionPerception.com will join, and Matt and I are going to do our very last of the July shows, the previews of NFL training camps. We're going to talk Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, and Browns. That's the teams of the AFC North, in case you didn't know. I think you'll have a fun hour, and I appreciate you so much for listening today. We are sponsored today by Fitbod. I know how many of you out there have thought about getting in better shape, and the summer is kind of slipping away. Maybe you tried, maybe you got bored, or you plateaued, or you just don't know where to get started. I use Fitbod. I really think it might make a difference in your fitness journey. It's like having a personal trainer in your pocket, but 1 year of Fitbod costs less than one session with a trainer. Fitbod will create a personalized workout routine for you based on your goals and your experience, if any, and your available equipment, if any. The workouts don't get boring because they adapt. I use Fitbod to track my progress, and I have for years, and I've made great progress, and it makes you feel really good to look at the app. Plus, I love that there are over 1,000 instructional videos, so you'll always know the correct form of whatever your workout is that day. This summer, push your progress and see what you're really capable of. Try Fitbod for free for 7 days at fitbod.me/Harris. Then when you're ready to sign up, get 25% off your subscription. fitbod.me/Harris. Take the free trial. It's very much worth trying. fitbod.me/Harris.
Today's guest.
Wide receivers, they got to be approved by you to ride with me. Oh, don't you know now is the perfect time to tell us which team your lifeline better, but do it now before tomorrow's today. Or today is tomorrow. I want to know, boy, young boy, who should I target in the later rounds around the waiver wire?
It is the boy, young boy. It is Matt Harmon. You can find him all over whatever social media platform you prefer. Just search for Matt Harmon. You can hear him as the anchor of the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, going, as is my show, 5 days a week as of next week. So there you go. There's your back-to-back listen each day. And of course, we always want to direct you to ReceptionPerception.com, an unbelievable resource for evaluating receivers. Matt tells me that new profiles will be dropping every week during August, during the busiest fantasy time of the year. What a pleasure. Thank you, Matt Harmon. How are you?
Hey, Chris, I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's that time of year. It just comes earlier every year. It's August, man. We are getting inundated with a bunch of stuff we probably shouldn't care about, and yet it's a good time to be alive. So I'm very happy to break it down with you today, man.
Yeah, stuff that we're going to largely probably identify as nonsense and not pay attention to, but the things we will pay attention to can matter. Yes, indeed. We got Almanac Day on Monday. We got Reception Perception profiles just flying out of our tuchuses. Got the stupid book. You have been a recipient of the novel. You've got it in your hot little hands.
Well, you really sold it with the stupid book. I mean, when you said, Matt, I'd love to send you a copy of the stupid book, I was like, sign me up. No, yeah, I do have it. I think I told you before we got going that I just finished another boring book. So now I will be reading your stupid book as we go into the new month. No, yeah. So I appreciate it, Chris. I'm very excited to dive into it.
It's did you get one with, this is Pound Foolish we're talking about, did you get the pre-cover? It's just like a blue cover?
No, it's got, I think.
Oh, you got the real cover.
It's literally sitting in my office right now. I could get up and walk over and look at it. I can stand up. You can hear me standing up and I can see it from here. No, it's got the regular cover. It's blue, but it's got the regular cover, I think.
Yeah, depending on when I send it out to friends and family and media moles and stuff. Some people got like a pre-cover before the cover was designed, and then some people got the actual
Do
cover.
I fit into friends or media moles or somewhere in between?
Both. I think you're both, aren't you?
I think I might
We've known
be
each
both.
other for like 15 years, but also you are a media member. You are a big guy, big time dude. Well, anyway, let's talk about the AFC North and what we will and won't pay attention to in training camp. These 8 shows, this is the 8th one. The order in which I bring up the teams in each division is the order they finished the previous season. And so let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have been memory wiped as champions of the AFC North. It just doesn't even seem real that happened last year. And yet, like, it's easy to make fun of the Steelers, and it's really because of who the quarterback is. They have a pretty high floor as long as Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's probably not a way for this offense to finish bottom 5 if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Do you agree with that?
I think so, and especially because while I'm not enthused by what we watched out of Rodgers last year, and nor do I expect there to be much change in what he can offer. I mean, just is so hyper specific now at this point. I do think it's a high floor team because McCarthy is kind of a high floor play caller. Even if you're not enthused about the ceiling, he's a high floor play caller. I think the offensive line is settled enough that it's a high floor. It gives them a floor, and then like their top 2 receivers are guys we know, and I don't think are in danger of falling off. So yeah, like the way you frame it that way, maybe I guess maybe the high floor is not the way to say it, but a projectable floor for this team is certainly in play.
Yeah, if you consider the floor the worst case, it's probably an okay worst case. That might be wrong. We're terrible at predicting this stuff beforehand. If Rodgers has become further dilapidated from even what he was last year, then I'm wrong in this assertion. But either way, I mean, like even the running backs, they're good professional running backs. Like there's lots of good professional players on that offense, all of whom will be constrained probably by Aaron Rodgers never wanting to get touched, probably in his personal life, but definitely on his professional life. And so I just go, I mean, I would love to know how much Rico Dowdle might infringe on Jaylen Warren. If somebody from the Steelers coaching staff is listening and wants to just send me a DM and tell me, that'd be fantastic. I just don't imagine that's something we can learn from training camp.
No, I think the headline I've already seen from these 2 guys is like they split work, getting first team reps. I'm like, well, of course they will. I mean, they're pretty different types of backs too. Like, and I like both backs as well. It's almost in a way unfortunate when I found myself drafting that it's like kind of, well, this guy is interesting in this format. This guy's interesting. They kind of are both the last call at running back 2. If I'm in a like hero RB, I've kind of punted on the second running back spot. I tend to look at these Steelers backs, but I'm not too sure that there's anything we're going to learn about these guys over the next few weeks, because I think they both, like, unless someone's going to be reporting Jaylen Warren is catching all the Kenny Gainwell checkdowns, which I kind of think is going to happen anyway. So it's just, there's not a lot to learn with these 2 guys.
Yeah, because I'm trying to put myself in the position of myself in 2 weeks, and I hear that, and I go, okay, that's kind of what I assumed would happen anyway, and also I don't believe the Steelers are making that known. I just don't, that's not what they're in the business of doing. They're going to unveil. We didn't know that Kenny Gainwell was going to get that many receptions in the third week of August last year. That wasn't something they were publicizing. True. And in the end, it was absolutely a function of cowardice from the quarterback. It was a function of him on 3rd and 11 throwing negative 2-yard passes because he didn't want to get hit. And so I don't imagine that went away, but because that's not a challenging thing to catch, Rico Dowdle can catch those. I've seen it.
Sure.
So the bottom line is I just don't think there's, I guess, would it be believable to you if at some point beat reporters in Pittsburgh start saying, Kaleb Johnson is no longer completely forgotten. I can see a world where he gets in the mix as a third body or gets a chance as the season gets going, or is that would any of that ever be believable to the detriment of Warren or Dowdle?
No, I would find that pretty hard to believe. I would have to see that Rico Dowdle's in danger of not making the roster or something like that. Like a report like that to really believe that Kaleb Johnson can really make a dent here. Now at this point, it's a previous staff pick. Even if that was the staff that iced him out, I don't know that I would believe almost any Kaleb Johnson buzz over the next few weeks.
Yeah, which isn't to say that second-year players don't sometimes simply figure it out. It's just we're trying to give draft advice in fantasy leagues, and because something's possible doesn't mean you should draft based on it.
Yeah, I think it would be okay, maybe I guess the actionable takeaway from hearing anything interesting about Kaleb Johnson would be, okay, maybe we'll talk about him as a waiver wire speed dial guy if something happens to one of these two players, specifically Dowdle, because I think he would fit better in that type of banger back role.
Yeah, and if this new administration really believed in Kaleb Johnson, they don't give Dowdle.
They don't sign Rico Dowdle. That's exactly.
Yeah. So we're again, so many of these July shows boil down to myself and you and all the guests talking about the way we like to play fantasy, the way we think is the best approach to fantasy, and it isn't when we say we're not going to believe anything good said about Kaleb Johnson for an entire month. That doesn't mean we're saying Kaleb Johnson is doomed and can never be good at football. It's that it was so bad last year that we have to see him in games that count before and do something good and not fumble on kickoffs and stuff, before we're willing
Correct.
to, this is just not the way you play smart fantasy. Anyway, and I would say similarly, Michael Pittman is, of course, an upgrade on all, frickin' Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson and Ben Skoranek and all these guys are getting shoved down our throats as potential second receivers. Of course it matters how Pittman's going to work in to DK Metcalf, and they're both, they're good. They're professional receivers. Again, one's opinion of those receivers is what it is. It just, you probably shouldn't take a news item from August and dramatically change what your opinion already was.
No, and I would say, just to use that as something we've already heard as an example, is DK Metcalf is going to move around more this year than he did last year. And, we've heard something similar in Carolina about Tedero McMillan, and for both those guys, they pretty much only lined up at X receiver last year. So it's kind of it's hard for them to move around any less. Them going from this type of player going from 15% to 17%, snaps in the slot. That is more. On a percentage basis, that is more. But I look at the room, and Michael Pittman's a perfect big bodied Z receiver who can kick inside, and Germie Bernard is kind of a perfect bodied Z receiver who can kick inside. So my guess is that we maybe see Metcalf take a few more percentage of his snaps in the slot simply because they're not running as much multiple tight end sets, which is what I would expect. Just based on the history of the two coaches we're talking about here, Arthur Smith and Mike McCarthy. But that's also not going to get me to really change my opinion about these Steelers wide receivers. God, yeah, there's not a lot to really say here about the Steelers and what you're looking for, other than, I am interested from maybe even just a dynasty perspective. Can Germie Bernard get an instant role on this team. I think he should. I like him as like a high floor glue guy type of prospect. Again, we're talking about another high floor thing here with the Steelers, but yeah, he's got to earn that in training camp and everything like that.
Yeah, so that's worth paying attention to. It's for the purposes of like
Yes.
long-term planning and what happens when and if Metcalf or Pittman gets hurt. Or I mean, Michael Pittman he's a baller. That dude takes so
I
much
like
punishment.
Pittman. I love Pittman.
Yeah, he's a really good player. I think he's transitioned into an older player like really well and has become like he's a contact magnet. This dude gets the crap beaten out of him. At some point that can, like again, a good camp from Bernard can get him on that same speed dial that you talked about where you go, all right, well, if Pittman's out of the way, I really don't imagine DK Metcalf suddenly developing as a technician in the 0 to 5 yard area. And so maybe Bernard becomes the dude with a Pittman injury, and we could learn that maybe in camp.
Yeah, totally. And I think that would make sense. It's just like Germie Bernard is kind of a Michael Pittman-ish player, at least from a deployment perspective. But yeah, I do like Pittman in this offense. I think there's a chance that honestly, I think now it's not even popular to say, but when he first arrived, it's like, oh, he could lead this team in catches this year because his style of play fits so well with Aaron Rodgers. But that's not something that we're going to learn much in camp either. But yeah, I'm certainly, from a long-term perspective and waiver wire speed dial perspective, if you need receiver help during the season, I'm looking at what Germie Bernard does in camp and what kind of role he can earn.
Yeah, I mean, I just updated some ranks, but the Steeler guys didn't move in the ranks, but just like some, based on stuff that I talked about earlier in the show. In a standard league, I have Metcalf 35 among receivers. I have Pittman 37. In a PPR, I have Pittman 33, Metcalf 38. So Are we excited? Do we draw massive distinction between the two of them? Do we draw massive distinction between the guys who are 10 spots ahead of them and 10 spots behind them? It's all kind of very same seeming in that, but I can see a circumstance where Pittman can be maybe more attractive than a Luther Burden, say, who has a lot of upside, probably way more upside than Pittman does, but also could kind of flop unexpectedly, and you could get a lot more safe production out of Pittman. Like, at some point, our opinion on those Steelers receivers probably isn't going to change. It may just come down to what you feel like your team needs as you're drafting.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. In builds where I've gone early running backs and you kind in like a managed league and you kind of just need some production at receiver, I found my way to Pittman, and I think that's kind of just what he is this year.
We are sponsored today by Lisa, the mattress I sleep on. I watch football film on it. I really love my mattress. Here's an email from listener Scott K, parts unknown, but a coastal elite. Hey Harris, I've heard you talk about Lisa before. When you said you may not need it right now, but keep it in mind, I scoffed at that statement. My bed was fine. Well, suddenly it wasn't fine. My back was screaming when I woke up, and my muscles were tight. My wife was having the same problems. We finally caved. It was time to get a great new mattress. You can guess how the rest of that email goes. Scott got a Lisa mattress. Those mattresses, they are really great. You can take a mattress quiz at the Lisa website, figure out which one is best for you. If, like Scott, you're waking up stiff and sore, check Lisa out. American-made mattresses, a really charitable company. I personally love the product, and it is their early access Labor Day sale, 25% off select mattresses at leesa.com. And if you use the code Harris, that's another $50 off the top as well. Get 25% off your new mattress at leesa.com for their early access Labor Day sale. And for an extra $50 off, use that code Harris. We are back with Matt, and we are talking about training camps for the teams of the AFC North. We've moved on to the team that I was pretty sure had won the division, but didn't, and missed the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens. They are also very, very settled in what they have. It's fair that people rank Derrick Henry differently from each other. Lamar Jackson, maybe some people have. He's left their circle of trust after last year. Zay Flowers, fair. I tend to be higher on Zay Flowers than a lot of people do, but I just don't know how. Let me pose it as a question rather than just say it as a statement. Other than somebody getting hurt, I don't really see a way for me to change my position on those guys.
No, me neither. I think they're pretty locked in. I like Zay a lot this year. I think he's become a little bit underrated as a receiver overall. I like that they've talked about how, the new staff is really excited to get him in the mix. They're really excited about him as almost like a kind of the leader in that room at this point, which makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm very excited about Zay's season this year. And Mark Andrews is just, well, I guess he's still there, and kind of roll him out. But I still find it a little surprising how that contract went down. But I don't know that there's anything for those two specifically. People beyond them, I'm interested in tracking. I'm curious your thoughts on that. But for those two guys, I think they're pretty settled.
Well, we're talking rookies beyond that, so I'm gonna ping pong it right back to you and ask your opinion of them. But let me just take a second and because we did when we talked about Isaiah Likely with Jake when we did the Giants training camp preview. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we weren't talking about what was left behind with the Ravens, but we did refer to the bizarreness of how this all worked out. So I guess let's pull that apart. I mean, I have Andrews as someone I don't want as a starting fantasy tight end. I have him 15. I have Likely one spot ahead of him. It's been 2 years in a row where, 2 years ago he just saved himself with touchdowns, and then last year, I mean, he looked like he was running in molasses. He looked slow to me, and I thought for sure he was the one who'd be jettisoned and they'd build around Likely. The fact that they didn't is we assume rational coaching. Was that rational coaching? Rational GMing?
And you have to remember too that in training camp last year they were talking about giving Likely the contract extension, but then he suffered an injury, and I just wonder if that is a bit of a when we look back at league history, and this is one of the most important, talking points, I wonder if that ends up being like a bit of a sliding doors moment where, maybe Likely was going to get that extension and then something went wrong there and they just felt like they gave the money to Andrews. Yeah, I don't know that is what I would have done. Let's put it that way. But I do think Mark Andrews, if you're, again, last call, I don't really want him as a starting fantasy tight end either, but I think I'm kind of where you are from a rankings perspective. Likely, obviously we're not talking Giants, but Likely is more interesting to me over there as opposed to Andrews back here. And I also just think there's not a guy. The thing is, I'm not going to do the who else are they going to throw to, because there can always be someone else. And I actually do find a couple of the rookie receivers intriguing, and we'll talk about, well, we don't have to talk about Rashad Bateman. My therapist says I'm not allowed to talk about Rashad Bateman anymore, but he is still the nominal number 2 receiver. But yeah, no, who else are they going to play at tight end? Truly take snaps? There's not really an obvious answer there.
Right, and unfortunately for Mark Andrews, that's been kind of true for much of the last 2 years, and still he just can't either get open or get on the same page. That film from last year is absolutely rough. Let's talk about the 2 rookies, mid-round type guys, not super hyped, but as recent NFL history has taught us, sometimes the draft gurus in these NFL teams just get it wrong because it's really tough to know beforehand whose game translates. We got plenty of Pukas. We got plenty of people who get taken in the middle. And then we got plenty of freaking Jaylen Pokes, N'Keal Harry's. Can you guess which team I root for? Who get taken earlier? And stink. It's Jacoby Lane and it's Elijah Sarratt. Absolutely, I don't know anything about them other than their names. So please, feel free, just kind of give us an overview.
Okay, so for Jacoby Lane, very much like a sacrificial X receiver, I think, if he hits in the league. Kind of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but with better hands to me. And obviously, I know that's damning with faint praise, but he's not a separator whatsoever, but he does really attack the football in the air, and just he makes some insane catches. Truly, I'd be charting him and everything. His quarterback throws it up to him at USC. I'm there's no way. He's not open even a little bit. There's no way he's coming down with, and he would make fantastic catches. So, again, not a prospect I was super high on because I don't think he has that separation ability, especially if we're talking about fantasy, for him to be a high volume player. But I think there's a path for him to being a role player as a sacrificial X receiver, which as an unabashed, someone that's going to hold the candle for Rashad Bateman until he retires, I'd actually love to see Bateman used less at X because I don't think that suits his skill set. And then you kind of have, if Lane emerges, I think that's the path forward, is that Bateman moves off ball a little bit. Flowers continues to be the number one by a long shot in the offense. I think that makes sense. Sarratt, I am interested in Sarratt from like a fantasy standpoint because I think he is one of these classic cases, and I wrote about this on the website in addition to doing a full YouTube video breakdown on this. He's one of these guys that doesn't separate on the perimeter in college, but beats zone coverage and probably looks like he could be someone that moves into the slot and is like a power slot player. Very similar to like an Amon-Ra St. Brown type to go from the boundary at USC, and has the body type to kick inside. And I think in this offense, what I'm imagining it to look like with Declan Doyle, I think there's a room for a player like that. So I really hope that we are seeing reports about Sarratt moving inside and playing in the slot in training camp and getting some momentum there, because I think he offers a skill set that this pass catching group, honestly, as much as I like Flowers and as much as I have been a Bateman fan in the past, he didn't play well last year, obviously. I do think that there's room for a power slot type player here. So I am admittedly one of these people in like a dynasty rookie drafts this offseason. Like, I don't care about draft capital. I think Sarratt's a better player.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, and let's face it, draft capital 1 round. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
Interesting. I'm going to keep an eye on that too. I've added both Lane and Sarratt to the list of things to pay attention to that we're assembling as we go along. The buzz around rookies is always tough to parse because, if the coaches, at minimum, you want coaches saying, I like them. They seem to be able to play football well. And if you don't hear that, forget it. It's over. Not good. Yeah. Even if they say that about a rookie or two, a lot of it is like what position, what string do they play with? They play controlled scrimmage against whoever, and Sarratt is running with the ones, so to speak, and Lane is running with the two, so to speak. Is there a chance, do you imagine, that the Bateman thing just they wind up cutting bait because, so to speak, because there was a time where I believed, it's been a few years, I know you've been kind of a longer holdout. This draft seems like we're at least contingency planning for the idea that Bateman is gone next year.
Oh, and I mean, again, that makes sense. He did not have a good season last year, but there's just not a lot in this room, man. Like, beyond those two guys, it's like the next one up is Devontae Walker, who was another like doesn't separate, big play merchant type developmental receiver that they took in the 4th round. And he's a guy they've talked up a little bit, like in OTAs and minicamp before. But at the same time, I think Lane and Sarratt have a chance to push him out of that wide receiver 3 gig. So yeah, I think this is like truly, and they've given Bateman a lot of chances, and obviously so have I. I think this is truly like his last chance to. And look, I mean, he was a good and really good on film and meaningful contributor for the team in 2024. So I mean, do I admit to you that, for $1 in a salary cap draft, I have put Rashad Bateman on like a 14-team start 3 flex insano goofball roster? Abso-freaking-lutely. Am I telling people to draft Rashad Bateman on your redraft fantasy teams? I am not, but I do think this is truly like his last chance to kind of cement the wide receiver 2 role.
When you do that in your own teams, it's # on brand, so it's okay. You're
correct.
allowed to. Yeah,
you do that. You do that almost for the bit.
Right. Can I say that when it comes to Sarratt and Omar Cooper and Kalen Black, and you know where I'm going with this, that there's a little piece of me that goes, maybe it's like silly, 1960s style analysis, but there's like a winning quotient from Indiana where I go, God, they shouldn't have been as good as they were, and they were so good, and it was such a story that maybe it becomes the Hoosier diaspora, and I should pay a little extra attention to those guys just because I love the story so much.
Well, number one, you do whatever you want with your own life. Number two, I listen. I talked to Omar before the draft, and like and I've heard the same about Sarratt. These are just like these guys are hashtag football players. Okay. Like they're really high effort, high character. Omar Cooper, just since you brought him up, I'll tell the story on the show. I've been doing this now since 2014, and obviously much more in the latter part of my career, talked to a ton of players about reception perception. Cooper is the only player off air after the conversation ended to ask me, like, okay, what's my worst graded route, and like, how can I get better? And we had a whole conversation about that after the show was over. So just to speak to your point, if you want to go down narrative scouting about these Indiana players, they really are just like very smart, heady, high character football players. And I do think Sarratt, like, as somebody who I imagine, to bring it back to like an actual football take here as opposed to the metaphysical part of this, I do think in order to make the positional transition that he is as like a outside, contested catch, back shoulder receiver to being more of that power slot option, it's a lot to put on a player, and you're going to need like the high character, the football character to do that.
The only other thing to talk about with the Ravens is the backfield, and I'm just very skeptical of Adam Randall. I don't know. I didn't see any Clemson football. I don't watch college football. I don't scout him beforehand, but what everybody says has me right down to him being the owner's pick. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like if that's true or not true, there's no reason why that should have been made public, because that's going to stick with Adam Randall forever.
100% true. It was 100% true. And it's just funny. Like I would have loved. It's like, okay, fine. It's his team. He's the owner. I would have loved for it to just been like more of a boring position. Like give me a linebacker. Give me a safety. Not that those are boring positions. They're important to a football team, but running back. It's an easy one to scout, Steve Bisciotti. Come on, let's get in the lab here.
I mean, it's great that it's true. You don't make that public. It puts way too much pressure on the kid. It makes him seem like a nepo baby. It is absolutely not something that I should know. As an idiot when it comes to I'm an idiot, Matt. I'm a fool. I don't know anything. And this is the one thing I know about Adam Randall before I start reading what you and other people wrote about him. We have to admit, letting Keaton Mitchell go and only having Justice Hill there behind a 32-year-old Derrick Henry, I guess there's we're bringing this back to what we can learn in training camp. And I guess we could potentially learn that Randall is like pleasantly surprising the beat reporters there, I guess.
Oh yeah, listen, I'm definitely making a note to pay attention to Adam Randall, because if pigs start to fly, the sun sets in the east and rises in the west, and Derrick Henry begins to slow down, Adam Randall would be a name to know, or Derrick Henry misses time. Adam Randall would be a name to know, and I don't really have a strong take on Adam Randall. I know my business partner James Coe, who's been doing some work on running backs, like he loves Adam Randall. So that's something. I'm definitely paying attention to that. And they have Justice Hill is like this number 2 back, but never becomes this. He's the type of guy that would not become the starting back if Derrick Henry misses time. He's the backup because he plays on passing downs and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely paying attention to Adam Randall just for the sake of kind of what we said about having a waiver wire speed dial option.
Moving on to the Bengals now, and I mean, we started with the Steelers, pretty settled. We go to the Ravens, very settled. We go to the Bengals, barring
super
injury.
Settled.
I just don't know what are we going to learn about, somebody look good in a drill when it comes to Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown. People are allowed to have varying opinions on those players, but we just can't be letting anything that happens in training camp change those opinions.
Jamar Chase got into a fight with the defense, DJ Turner specifically, I believe, who's a really, really good cornerback for the Bengals. Even though the Bengals defense isn't good, he's a great player. I think that might be the most interesting thing we hear about a Bengals skill position player over the course of the entire training camp. I would put it this way, though. The one thing I am paying attention to as it relates to those guys, and there's already been some buzz about this in the offseason, and but there kind of always is, and it's one of those like I really will believe it when I see it, but it's not going to force me to change my rankings or anything like that. But I would just love to hear, hey, Joe Burrow's going under center more. They are trying to move the offense forward away from just the Peyton Manning, get him in the gun, do the sheriff stuff, point and shoot type offense. And I mean, look, that's the way Burrow wants to play. That's why they've played. That's why they've run the offense that way. I think they could push to being from like a top 5 to the number 1 ranked offense if they introduce some more of those modern concepts and everything like that. And it's been like bit by bit every season. They've moved Jamar Chase around more. They've used more motion. Again, I don't know that hearing that in training camp is going to force me to alter my rankings or my draft advice on any of these guys, but it's just a way that this can go from being everybody's amazing to everybody goes nuclear this season.
We are sponsored again by Cowboy Colostrum. If, like me, you regularly fight a wonky stomach, you know it's a constant battle. Like, I drink AG1. It really helps. Since I've also been drinking Cowboy Colostrum, also really steady. Like, what you're looking for is like a neutral tummy, and I really think Cowboy has been helping. So colostrum is the first milk produced by the cow. Cowboy collects it after the baby calves have had their fill, and they make it into this powder. The one I've got is cookies and cream, no artificial flavors, no fillers, no shortcuts. Tastes really good. And 83% of participants in a clinical study said their gut health was better, 79% less bloating and inflammation, 72% improved digestion. Plus, it's really good for skin and hair. Like I said, came along at a very good time for me. If you have kind of a persistently edgy stomach, I really recommend. It's a regular for me by now. And try the new cookies and cream flavor. For a limited time, get up to 25% off your entire order at cowboycolostrum.com/Harris when you use the code Harris at checkout. 25% off with code Harris at cowboycolostrum.com/Harris. Okay, we're back with Matt, and I had one more Bengal topic that I guess I could ask you, but again, I feel like I'm stretching for topics because here we are, Samaj P. Ryan. Here we are.
Yeah, right.
The thing is, as much as like an early adopter on Chase Brown that I was, and 2 years ago, was a flag player on the show, and like everybody listening had him, and it was a really fun discovery, and so we're favorably inclined. I think by now his price is catching up, and so now I doubt he comes at massive value anymore. He does profile as a guy who would benefit from a competent second guy. It's one of those situations where I feel like, okay, are you going to be Devon Achane or are you going to be Bucky Irving? Is the massive workload simply going to make you go, as you said, go nuclear, or is it going to lead to a 6-week absence because just eventually Chase Brown hasn't broken down yet, but he's a smaller player, and you're always walking that line between, man, if you had a second guy who didn't steal too much, but there's always someone else. It almost would make me feel more comfortable with Chase Brown, but when that's Samaj P. Ryan, good Lord, I just can't. So I guess I would be interested to hear if Tahj Brooks, we've heard Matt Waldman come on the show and say he really liked Tahj Brooks as a player. I watched his quote-unquote film. He didn't play a lot last year.
Yeah.
Is that worth paying any attention to at all in camp?
Man, I wonder if they're a team that could end up trading for a running back. I know that they're a team. I feel like everybody talks about the Cardinals when you come up with this, because I think the fantasy community is probably trying to get one of these running backs out of Arizona, which I do wonder what the reaction would be if the Bengals traded for somebody like James Conner or something. But yeah, I agree with you that, I used to do a show with Austin Eckler, and he would always talk about, man, he'd be on the show while being the fantasy RB1 overall, like begging for a second pitch, running back to kind of take some of the punishment away from him. And I do think Chase Brown could probably use someone like that in the backfield. So I think that's something to monitor. I don't know. I don't know that it's one of the guys they currently have on the roster, but certainly a guy like Brooks is worth paying attention to.
Yeah, well, he's a black box. We don't really. All we know is that he certainly did not force anybody's hand last year, no. and that doesn't mean he can't do it in the future. And if the way the training camp stories out of Cincinnati go are that, yeah, Tahj Brooks is not really any more of a factor than he was last year, cool, that dream ends. And if the stories are they've got their second guy and Samaje Perine roster spot is no longer like it could go that way. I don't think it's going to mean you must draft Tahj Brooks as the Chase Brown handcuff. I guess it could. And of course, I mean, that's the most fascinating part. If a team that has a smaller feature back trades for a James Conner, say, for example, for sure, I know the way this works, Chase Brown's ADP goes down. And frankly, I want that to happen because I understand that maybe the path to him being the RB4 for the season gets narrower, but the path for him to be the RB13 maybe gets safer.
Probably doesn't change at all, and people then would draft him later. Yeah, I'm really into Chase Brown this year. I think, again, there's a chance that this whole offense just really takes a step forward, and obviously Burrow being healthy would be a big part of it. But yeah, I'm into Chase Brown this year, and I do think any sort of anything to push his ADP down, which is probably not going to happen, I would be interested in that. I'd like to take him later. But yeah, they're a team that just very unsettled beyond Chase Brown, and a guy that they haven't even committed to long term in Chase Brown. So I'm fascinated to track that if there's anything that comes of that backfield over the course of the next few weeks.
All right. Well, Cleveland Browns, obviously, here's where the value is. I mean, it is.
Well, here's where things are unsettled here for everything we just said.
Yeah, it's certainly unsettled, and a lot of training camp stories that do matter, and we will pay attention to. And I keep saying this as we get to the bottoms of these divisions. These are the teams where you will actually get value. These are the teams where if you can sniff it out right, and everyone decides they're lost for dead, and then they submit a fine season as opposed to a disaster season, you find value. And we're not going to know until the games start counting. Like, we didn't know the Colts were about to be really good on offense. We didn't know the Patriots were about to be really good on offense this time last year. So let's talk about Browns. I guess Quinshon Judkins is the one guy being drafted to be a fantasy starter, as he should. It was good tape before he got hurt. And the reports so far have been pretty optimistic about his recovery. As long as that continues, I assume his ADP either stays where it is or even maybe goes up over the course of August.
Feels like it would be tough for it to go up, but yeah, I think the fact that he's coming in healthy, Harold Fannin too, obviously drafted, as a tight end one.
Sorry.
But I just mean he's also coming off of an injury as well. Like he had groin surgery this offseason. So monitoring their health reports is probably the most important thing. I would just be interested, and again, this is really hard to know until you get to the real games, of course, but is Quinshon Judkins going to get more passing down work? Because you kind of need that on a team that's probably not going to be very good in the Cleveland Browns. Being an early down banger on what might be one of the 5 worst football teams in the NFL isn't ideal. But I do find myself interested in this I'm sure I'm going to shock you when I say this. I do find myself really interested in this offense overall, and really being maybe a bit too strong of a word, because I think Todd Monken is a great offensive coach. I want Todd to survive this season because I think he's going to be really fun behind the mic. And I also think, again, smart offensive coach. And I think the run game will be well designed. I think Judkins could benefit from that. Obviously we have a big question behind center, which hangs over all of this, but Judkins is a guy that when I've looked at my rankings, I haven't really had a strong take one way or another on, but I do think if we hear he's gonna be more of a true 3-down back as opposed to he's the 2-down, and then Dylan Sampson, who's a really nice pass catcher and pretty electric in his own right in certain areas, him being that kind of 3rd-down guy does limit Judkins' ceiling. So that's something to pay attention to, is Judkins passing down work.
But again, as you say, I just find it really doubtful that the Browns are going to tell us that.
No,
they're not going to come out and tell Dylan Sampson the 3rd week of August, indirectly at a press conference saying,
big dog.
Yeah, we're not really counting on Dylan Sampson for anything this year. They're not going to give us that info. You say there's a good chance this is a bottom 5 offense, but I really think you could say that about half the league, because we just don't really know beforehand. And so, as I said when we talked about the Dolphins and when we talked about the Jets and the Cardinals, this is where value is. If you can find the guy and you guess, you just sort of get, it's a late enough round that they don't have to start for you. Now Fannin and Judkins do have to start for you, where you have to take them. So that's a different conversation. But everybody else, if a good player gets depressed because everybody just decides it's a hopeless environment, and then they're the Colts of last year before Daniel Jones got hurt, you suddenly have a fantasy starter out of nowhere. Judkins, as I say, isn't going to be. I have him 16 standard among running backs, 18 PPR. He could go higher than that, I guess, but like I don't think he's going to go top 12 at any point, no matter what the role is, no matter, just because people are going to decide the Browns stink and I don't want any part of it, and they're going to be playing from behind and all those things that we might have suspicions, but we can't really know beforehand. And as such, I can imagine being okay and kind of happy if he's my RB2.
I have found myself taking him as an RB2 for sure, because I think he's a good player. Like, and I think
he's
metrics wise, he's a good player. It just always is going to be tough in that environment to really, really stand out for fantasy. But like you said, things can happen, and you're right. There's so many offenses that could be bottom 5, but I also like the teams you mentioned there. I can tell myself a story. That's what July and August is for, telling yourself a story. And if the story comes true in Cleveland, that's a back that I think is good and can hold down a role.
Me too. Does the quarterback, you referred to the quarterback battle, the Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson battle of the Titans, not the Titans, the Browns. Does that matter to you for the purposes of everybody else? I know you're not probably going to be real excited about having either one of those guys, even on a super flex team. But does the outcome, I kind of don't believe it's a battle. How in the world would you let Deshaun Watson play for you ever again when it's the last year of the biggest Albatross contract ever in NFL? But they're saying it's a battle. Does the result influence the way you think about everybody else's rank? Or is it kind of just like, I don't care, whichever one is going to kind of be the same impact on everybody else?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it actually really does, because I think Watson is that bad. And I think... It's funny how this one has played out, reading the tea leaves and stuff is right after, the draft. Some of the Cleveland reporters like, Deshaun Watson enters the offseason as the QB1. And then by the end of training minicamp, it's like, well, Shedeur Sanders has closed the gap. And it's like, I don't think that's anything Shedeur is doing. I think that's just, oh, right. This is what it looks like when Watson, who was terrible, then pops his Achilles twice. Like, that's what he looks like. And then, he opens camp with back-to-back passes that were intercepted. It was Deshaun Watson. So I'm actually going to go ahead and say this does really matter to me. Not because I find myself to be like a big Shedeur Sanders honk. But I actually think going back and somehow having the stones to watch the Browns offense last year, the fortitude to watch the Browns offense, I think Shedeur is not as bad as the stats indicate. And to be clear, the stats indicate he was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year, among guys that played enough snaps. It's like him and Cam Ward. But Shedeur, I think he can be like a functional NFL quarterback with a lot of flaws, clear holes in his game. But if he's the starter for the vast majority of the season, I think that could be okay, passable for the pass catchers. And I really like the pass catchers. Maybe this is a little bit of copium, but like I really like Casey Concepcion. I really like Denzel Boston and how they complement each other. I'm over the Jerry Jeudy experience, but those two guys in particular, I'm interested in. So, and I think Shedeur could be good enough for those guys to be like, all right, and maybe not certainly not starters in fantasy necessarily, but guys are like, okay, I could throw KC in my bye week flex. I at least know what these guys can do by the end of the season, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. And the way I would rephrase it, I would probably go even further and say, if Sanders, the if then that you just gave, which is if Sanders can kind of keep the boat afloat, sure, Concepcion, Boston, whoever might not be your week 1 starter. But again, we were saying the same things. It was impossible for any Colts receiver. It was impossible for, and like by week 4, we're like, I guess it's not impossible. Our minds are going to get blown in 1,000 ways. And that's one that they could, but I'm so with you that it needs to be Sanders, that what's baked into my ranks, modest as they are for these Browns,
right,
is a Shedeur Sanders under center and not Deshaun Watson. And I didn't find Sanders' arm to be horrible. It's pretty strong. I didn't find his throwing accuracy to be horrible. It's fine. The problem was something that we're not going to learn in training camp, which is, would you please throw the ball? You're still holding the ball. Could you stop holding the ball? And he's just not mobile enough to, like, he can't get away with that. The thing that he would do at Colorado, which is just like run around until somebody got open, he just can't do it in the NFL, and he's going to have to, he has to throw the ball. But yes, if Watson wins that, oh God, he's not going to. I really don't believe it.
No, he won't. I mean, he might be like, he might get like a ceremonial start in week 1 because they're just so pot committed. But I honestly do feel like he will be so bad in camp that Monken won't start him. I'd be shocked.
Organizationally, wash your damn hands. What are we talking about? You want to put him in a position where he succeeds and you have to consider giving him another contract? What are you, crazy? Get him out of everybody's face. He should just cut him. Let's finish by talking about those receivers. Let's do the same routine. Yeah. These two guys are more highly drafted than the Baltimore guys, and a lot more is expected of them, maybe right away. Again, like, I know a little more about Concepcion and Boston. They're joining a receiving core that has a couple of incumbents. I liked Cedric Tillman, but he just can't stay healthy. I know. Have a very long history of doubting Jerry Jeudy's ADP and being right every single year. How will we know? How will we know that Concepcion and Boston have superseded the veteran components there? What can we hear about? And please give me your evaluation of both of them.
Well, yeah, by the way, it sounds like we're watching the same film on both Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Yeah. I think Tillman actually has a chance to not be on the roster just because they've been talking about Isaiah Bond. Can't count on him. Yeah. But I think he'd be an interesting reclamation project for somebody because he really did in that 2024 season. Like, he showed some stuff, and even at the beginning of last year was playing all right before, again, he just can't stay on the field. They're talking up Isaiah Bond too as the third receiver or like some sort of member of the receiver core. Bond was an undrafted free agent because he completely fell out of the draft due to, I will just leave it at, legal issues, and you guys can do the Google for yourself. But it was not an undrafted talent. He was probably more of somebody you should think of like as a third round, early fourth round type of player. So when you hear like, oh, Isaiah Bond is that's not completely out of nowhere that guy would make some noise. But the reason I bring him up is because I think this is another, like, they're gonna say the right things about Jerry Jeudy. They're gonna yes, and they even right after the draft they said, "Oh, he's still." Andrew Berry, the GM, said he's our bell cow receiver, which I've never heard anyone refer to anyone as a bell cow receiver. And if there is such a thing as a bell cow receiver, it's definitely not someone like Jerry Jeudy. But they can say all the right things. But I actually do think there's a real chance that Jerry Jeudy could maybe even be like a midseason trade candidate or something like that. I don't know if they can outright cut him out of training camp. That would be a little surprising, but. Like, there's a real chance that it's Boston at X, Concepcion at Z, and Bond as like the speed slot by the end of the season, because I think Jeudy could, again, maybe be like a midseason trade candidate if there are injuries. And again, I'm a huge fan of Concepcion. I was ahead of consensus on him as a prospect. I thought he was just someone that, he has issues at the catch point. He has some drops, but he has real separation ability, and I expect him to be deployed well in this offense. Some people compared him to like Zay Flowers. I could see that as like a usage type plan for him. I just think he is so explosive, knows how to beat man coverage. I'm a big fan of him. So I think he'll get designer opportunities, easy catches, which if it's Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, I could see, there even being some like PPR scam weeks for Casey Concepcion, but he's so talented that he'll make plays out of those. So he's someone that I wouldn't just like cross off the list just because he plays for the damn Cleveland Browns. And then, for Denzel Boston, probably less fantasy viable in year one because I think he will be used more as an X receiver outside on ball. But I also like him to be more than just an X long term. I think he fits more along the profile of like, if we're talking about receiver families and the patriarchs of the family are like Michael Thomas, Drake London, Tedero McMillan kind of in the next tier down. And then there's like Cortland Sutton and Michael Pittman, like X receivers who are a little bit more than that. Boston, I think, fits in that like kind of Pittman-ish zone where he could be a big-bodied X, but he doesn't have to just be. So I like Boston. I think the way those two guys complement each other really makes a lot of sense. So I am hoping by the end of the year that they're kind of the starting receivers, and we're getting to see a little bit of them because from a dynasty standpoint, I think they'd be interesting if they had a real deal quarterback.
So I have them both ranked inside my top 160. So, throw late round picks at them, and I agree with you that right now I'm thinking of them as a tandem, but depending on what gets said about them, there's a chance that one of them could be elevated above the other. It's something very much worth paying attention to. Sometimes you know it when you hear it about just how the beat reporters say what it's like. Yeah, Concepcion is always out there, and Boston comes in the second group, or in the competitive practices against other teams, they're only throwing Boston's way, and Concepcion can't get a taste. And would you agree that's probably I don't think it's likely that Todd Monken or anybody else is going to come out and say one of these guys is a bum and the other one's going to start for us. It's you're having to read between the lines a little bit.
Well, if anyone would say it, it would be Todd Monken. But I don't think that would happen, and I think you would have to kind of read between the lines, mostly just reps. And that is what's interesting about Boston is that because he's the bigger body, and look, I think Concepcion is and will be a better player than Jerry Jeudy, but just body type wise, deployment and role wise, there's probably less overlap with Boston than Jeudy. Although last year and obviously it's different coaching staff, they weirdly used Jerry Jeudy at X receiver, which made no sense, and that was strange. But I do ultimately think that that's something that could be maybe a tie that you break in favor of Boston. But I think the problem is there. He's going to run the difficult downfield routes, and I trust Shedeur Sanders to get the ball out quickly on designer stuff, and that
right.
is a little difficult.
Yeah. I'll get you out of here on this question. If you get the Jerry Jeudy or Cedric Tillman release, they're cut by the end of camp. Listen, the salary cap's fake. That doesn't matter. They just don't want to pay the actual dollars to Jerry Jeudy. He's making a lot of them, and they can get out from under some of the less guaranteed money. Because the quarterback is so bad, even if it's Sanders, we're still not saying it's good. I assume there's still a limit. You might bump one or both, depending on how the news is going, of those two rookie receivers a bit higher on your receiver list, but I assume there is a ceiling for how high you'd be willing to go.
If it's Tillman, no, I don't know that I'd really bump them because right now I just don't know how he projects into the mix here unless we find out by the end of camp no, he's played so well Boston is not going to start. But for Jeudy, I think if Jeudy was to get released, I would see a bump for both of these guys just because look, we can sit here and say that they don't think about they think about contracts and stuff like that when it comes to doling out playing time. So if he's not on the roster truly, then I think that would be a big bump specifically for Concepcion.
How big a bump? Not a top 100 player probably.
Yeah, I don't know about top 100, but right now he's in that just kind of zone of, well, this guy's going to be on the field and he's got to be ranked as a top, almost fringe top 50 receiver. I could see him getting up to maybe the in the mid 40s at receiver, and overall ranks right now. Again, I've got Concepcion kind of in the deep, not in the deep hundreds, but 130ish. I could see him getting close to the hundreds.
Okay. All right. Well, the Browns do contain some interesting stories to track, and we will do so. Thank you so much for doing this, Matt. I appreciate it. The Yahoo Fantasy Forecast is coming back to daily next week, so we of course want you all listening to subscribe. Please do. And also, while you're thinking of it, while you're hearing me say this, just type in receptionperception.com into your phone right now and just take a look at what's free there. There's samples and stuff like that. I'm telling you, it's money well spent if you become a subscriber of Reception Perception. There's good free stuff too. And then when you're a subscriber, you get the full archive of all the evaluations Matt has done over the years. It's an incredible amount of work. He's a hardworking gentleman. He watches so much game film, and you will really benefit, not just for your fantasy team, but your knowledge overall about what makes a good receiver. I've learned so much from Matt as far as that goes. Remember, on Reception Perception, new profiles are dropping every week, starting next week all the way through draft season. Matthew, thank you for doing it. You know you'll be back on in August because we have our very traditional super deep sleeper crap.
That's right. I can't wait to see who was on the list last year.
We'll nail them all like we do every year. You're a great friend. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it as always.
And thank you so much for listening. Let me also thank the 3 sponsors that made today's show possible. We had Fitbod and Lisa and Cowboy Colostrum. And you can find information about those sponsors in today's show notes. All the current sponsors are listed at harrisfootball.com. We've made it through July. It was fun. It was a leisurely pace. It was great to get back in the groove. And now things start getting real. The podcast will be back to full time next week. We'll have shows for you Monday through Friday next week. Now the Wednesday show will back to being the Andy Barron's show for the Yacht Clubbers, and the rest will all be here on the main show. I'm pumped. Plus, Almanac Day is coming on Monday, so I got to finish all that up and get it ready. Also, don't forget, send me an email, heyharris@harrisfootball.com, or you can @ me on social media if you want. Tell me how you'd like to be bribed. What kinds of promotions would you like to have for people who pre-order Pound Foolish, so that we can all try and game the system together and get cumulative press on the bestseller list. Maybe, Zoom, maybe the grand prize is like I have to be there for the first round of a draft or something like that. I don't know. You be creative, whatever you think would be that the Yacht Possums would like, that you would like, and be excited by, and pre-order Pound Foolish for. Email me, heyharris@harrisfootball.com. Coming up on Monday, Dave Richard from CBS Fantasy will be my guest. Dave and I will try and sum it all up and talk about the training camp stuff we most want to pay attention to in August. That one should be really fun as well. Until then, thanks again so much for listening. Your hat is awesome. You're awesome for wearing it. I will talk to you on Monday.
The Harris Football Podcast's opening theme is Under the Gun by Apex Manor. The closing theme is Say Yes by The Wellspring. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode.